Hello ladies and gentlemen, MarauderEX here with a reaction video that I'm not being sued by the reaction people for. No, anyway, so I just watched the reveal of the Nintendo NX, which is now known to the world as the Nintendo Switch, which I've seen a lot of conversation going on back and forth about, mostly jokes about how Nintendo is versatile. They are not a top or a bottom, they are not a dom or a sub, but they are in fact a Switch. Now, jokes aside, not a fan of the name. I'm really not. I think NX was a little cooler, but I've also kind of liked the project titles for a lot of consoles more than the finalized console name themselves. Project Katana comes to mind. It's one of my favorite ones, but, you know, I'm weird. So, let's talk about what it is. It's exactly what we thought it was gonna be. It's a console handheld hybrid. We saw this coming. We've seen the paperwork, we've heard the rumors, we've heard the rumblings. It's what it is. In fact, we saw some other patents get shown off that we were wondering if it was going to be a thing. Cartridge media, we know that's a thing now. Like that, they showed that in the video. We kind of knew it was a thing beforehand, but we were just kind of really guessing. Because everyone was just going, it could be for the 3DS, it could be that they're using a new... We don't know. But this is it. It's using cartridge-based media. One of the other patents we saw that I was kind of hoping wouldn't be a part of it, because I'm not sure how I feel about it, is the fact that around the tablet, you have the sections that allow it to connect controllers, so that you can use it as like a Wii U tablet. You can slide those off. However, what I do find a little bit more reassuring about it is you don't have to use those. So if you are using it in a portable fashion, they did show a section where he used it just as a screen and had the controllers not attached, which I think is going to be a little weird, because I think that's going to be very awkward, much like the Wii U or the Wii controller nunchuck pairing that just feels very off, especially compared to an actual controller. But they did show that you could use the actual controller when it's just in the tablet mode as well. So they're giving options for it, which I think is a really good idea. Because otherwise people would complain about the gimmicky control schemes like they have for the last two Nintendo consoles. So the fact that there are options that allow for versatility is a good thing, in my opinion. So, but we did see that patent come out. Again, I'm not, if that were just how it is, I would be very on the fence about it, but I'm a little more relaxed about it because there are some options. So if I, don't like one of the control schemes, it looks like I have alternatives. However, I have to say, I do like the idea of console handheld hybrid. I've always kind of been sold on that idea, for the reason that I don't buy or play a lot of handheld games these days. The last handheld that I invested any serious amount of money in was the PSP. Reasoning behind it is it has a native video out. I could play it on my TV when I was at home. I hated the fact that it completely compressed the screen into a small area, leaving a large black border around my television for no reason other than because. But I don't buy a lot of 3DS games. I didn't buy a lot of DS games because the only way to play that is through a handheld. There is no way for me to record that footage easily without spending hundreds of dollars on a capture card or having to resort to emulation. Nowadays, with the 3DS, if you pick up a new 3DS, you are able to use the new 3DS as well as some custom firmware to allow Wi-Fi streaming, which is actually a very good fix, but it's not quite enough, because it only works with 3DS titles. With DS titles, or WiiWare titles, or eShop titles rather, excuse me, it doesn't necessarily work. So it is confined to 3DS games, at least as of now. That may be something that may be fixed in the near future. And it's something that we've been looking in here to try to figure out how to stream DS and 3DS content, how to record DS and 3DS content, again, without having to spend a ton of money. So this opens that door of, if you want to play a console style game, you still have the ability to record that because it obviously outputs to the TV. But if, and this is a big if, this is one of the things that we're still not entirely sure about, because one of the theories worked a little differently, and I'll get into that in a second, is the portable game market. If they're going to shift more to this so that they have options for the handheld and console market, or if they're going to say, oh, well, we'll just stick with the 3DS because it has a larger install base. So that's where I'm wondering it's going to go. But I say this because a lot of handheld games these days are games that I'm very interested in. Turn-based JRPG-style games really more commonly found on the 3DS than anything else, especially consoles these days. So, like, Dragon Quest VII just came out on the 3DS, and I would love to play it, I'd love to stream it. I could get the PS1 version, but it's an older version. This one has a lot of updates, a lot of changes, a lot of fixes to some of the things that may have been weird in the game before. So, the only way for me to record or stream that would be, again, buy a new 3DS, put custom firmware on it, or spend an exorbitant amount of money on a capture card. Neither of those options really appeal to me. So, this is the if that we were getting to, if the NX combines both markets. Nintendo has always been about keeping their markets kind of separate up until now. It's like they focus on them separately to where it's almost like Sega's pillar strategy. It's like, we're going to keep this, and we're going to keep this, and we're going to keep them going until they have a direct successor. Well, a lot of people were saying that the NX was not going to be a direct successor to the Wii U or the 3DS, and it's obviously a home console. I can't imagine that they're going to keep the Wii U, the NX, and the 3DX going, because then you have one thing competing with both things. Whereas if they get rid of the Wii U, which more than likely, then they have the NX competing with the 3DS, which is a little more viable, especially since the way that the Switch, I'm going to keep calling it the NX because that's what I've been calling it for like years now, because Nintendo, is, say this, my phone is the screen, it docks into the, I was going to use my wallet as an example and I dropped it, but it docks into the thing. We were expecting it to actually function as a secondary screen as well, which would have opened the door for a lot of DS ports, because you would still have the two screens. Now, unless they have a controller option where they have another screen, that does not look like it's going to be the case. So a lot of DS games are going to stay DS games unless people port them over to remove the second screen functionality for a lot of things, which is doable, but it becomes a cost versus sales argument. So I don't know. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's an interesting gimmick, and that's the thing. A lot of people are sitting here screaming that it's another gimmick, and Nintendo just needs to stick with powerful consoles to compete, but that's never really been Nintendo's style. They've always had something gimmicky to bring a new experience. And, you know, a lot of people say it's gimmicks, but it's a gimmick if it doesn't work. It becomes an industry feature if it does. Nintendo really kind of hit one out of the park with Mario 64 and bringing full 3D gameplay like that quickly became the standard. And a lot of people saw that in the beginning as you know, a technological advancement, but some people saw it as a gimmick. The motion controls people saw as a gimmick, until every console that generation, you had the PlayStation Move and the Xbox Kinect became everywhere. It wasn't widely adopted by a lot of titles, especially AAA titles, but it was there. So you can say it's a gimmick, but if it's a gimmick that sells, it's not a gimmick, it sells. So only time will tell how it's going to work with the Nintendo Switch. But I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic, which is weird for Nintendo. Like, I have not been optimistic for Nintendo in a while now because of how they've been handling a lot of this. The biggest concern is it going to be strong enough to compete? Because people are worried that because they're focusing on a gimmick, that the power is going to suffer, and it's not going to be strong enough to compete with the PS4 or Xbox One, let alone their half-gen upcoming consoles. The Scorpio and PS4.5, I'm blanking on its name at the moment, that are, gearing up for, 4K gaming. So people are worried that if the Switch is not powerful enough, we're going to have a repeat of the Wii U. Of it's not strong enough, it's just a gimmick, and therefore, because it's not strong enough, AAA titles, AAA developers, people aren't going to want to develop for this console because they're going to have to cut so many features for games to get it to function on the least powerful box. That is the biggest concern at the moment, and until we see spec sheets, like official spec sheets, we're not going to know. I know there's been a lot of talk about people in the industry, people from Ubisoft, EA, other major third-party developers, saying that this is a good console to code for. It's good to work on. It allows a lot of interesting freedom and flexibility, as well as being able to put out good quality content. So I think if you've got people saying that, then it's going to be okay, but I don't remember what people were saying about the Wii U when it came out. Or before it came out. People who were working on launch titles for that, I don't remember if they were saying that it's like comparing it to the other consoles. I don't think we've had any direct comparisons. Like, I don't think the Ubisoft president's gone out and said, yes, the Switch is just as powerful, like it's going to provide just as strong games as the PS4. I don't think we've got that, something that concrete. Otherwise, people would probably be losing their minds about it. So that's really the last question that needs to be answered. What is its power? What is it actually got under the hood in terms of what can we expect gameplay footage from it? We saw a bunch of gameplay in the video, and I say that because it probably wasn't even gameplay. It probably wasn't even edited in after the fact. But they showed things like Skyrim. They showed a Mario title. They showed a Mario Kart title. They showed a lot of things. The Skyrim is what got a lot of people because that's not on a Nintendo console at the moment. So if it is, like the remake of not Skyrim. I'm blanking on the Elder Scrolls games at the moment. I know there's the HD remake of not Skyrim, but the one before Skyrim. If that is in fact that game, then that's going to be really interesting because that's going to be on all three platforms. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. They didn't say what it was. So we're just left up to speculation and the fact that, again, it probably wasn't actual gameplay. It was probably just, pre-rendered video edited into that video after the fact. So the guy was sitting there playing game on a blank screen looking like he's having fun. That's probably what happened. That's more than likely what happened. So it's interesting. And again, I'm optimistic. I was really kind of thinking I was going to just drop Nintendo after how they handled the Wii U. I felt really upset about that because I picked up a Wii U as my first console for this generational cycle, and for a long time I had 3 games for it. And by the end of it, I'll probably have 21, 22 titles for it, which is not an unimpressive library, but it's also the smallest library out of any console I own. So that's a little annoying from a consumer standpoint. So I made it a point to say if they show the NX as to what I think it is, what I think it's going to be, depending on what games become available for it, how they market it, that's going to be the determining factor of if I would actually spend money on it. Like, I'm not instantly sold on it. I'm a little more optimistic, but if they get 3DS style games on this console, so they get the people who want to develop for 3DS using, you know, smaller budgets to make, you know, certain types of games, like I said, JRPGs, things like that, turn-based games. If they want to take that to make a smaller budget title, release it on a console, that is what I'm actually kind of hoping. I kind of want the 3DS developers who've made a lot of awesome 3DS games. Like I said, Dragon Quest, the Etrian Odyssey series, there are a lot of DS games. The most recent Fire Emblem games that have been actual tactical games, I don't remember. I think the last Fire Emblem tactical game we got was on the Wii, the Dawn of Radiance, I believe. So it's been a little while since we've got one. But we've got several on the DS, so hopefully we can start transitioning that. That's what I'm hoping. I'm kind of hoping Nintendo kind of goes, okay, we're done with the 3DS, we're done with the Wii U, we're going to put both of those together, and we're going to put all of these great games on one console. That's probably not going to happen. That's probably very wishful thinking on my part, but that's kind of what I'm hoping. And I'm kind of hoping Nintendo encourages the 3DS developers to migrate to the Nintendo Switch. I'm kind of hoping that if it is strong enough to get AAA titles, that Nintendo fosters a better relationship with AAA developers to get the major releases on their console as well. Because I think that's been a lot of people's problem, is that they want the Nintendo experience, but they also want all of the awesome AAA titles in one place, because then Nintendo has its edge, because Nintendo does make some amazing first-party games, and everyone screams at the top of their lungs that Nintendo should just go third-party so that they can get Nintendo-quality games on better hardware, and that's what people want. So if Nintendo actually has a machine that is capable power-wise to compete, then they will get their own first-party games as well as the third-party games if they foster those relationships. And then you have Nintendo providing that thing that everyone wants, is all of these games on one console, rather than having to have two consoles, one for the Nintendo first-party stuff and then one for everything else. So if Nintendo plays this right, I think it's very, very plausible that this could be a very successful console. But it's also, like I said, people are seeing it as a gimmick. It's entirely possible to drop the ball early on this one and just completely screw it up. So time will tell. We'll have to wait and see what launch titles are going to come out for it, what companies are announcing what projects for it, and what the technical specs for it are. Once we get those pieces of information, you know, we as gamers and consumers will be able to make a more informed decision. Most of what I've seen online is very positive about it so far, so I think they did a good reveal. I knew they weren't going to answer every question about it right off the bat, but I'm curious to see what the game plan is for it. It is what we thought it was going to be, and now that we know for a fact it is what we thought it was going to be, maybe a lot of these rumors and theories that people have about how it could be marketed and developed for that are interesting ideas. So we'll see how it goes. So let me know your thoughts and opinions about the Nintendo Switch. Are you a fan of the name? Would you prefer keeping it in X? Do you like the are you interested in a console handheld hybrid? Do you think taking a console quality game on the go is a good idea? Or do you think maybe it's going to eat battery power too much? Or maybe it's not going to be powerful? I want to know everyone's thoughts about it, because there's so much that could be said about it now that we know some things and we have concrete proof of this is what it is. We now can start narrowing down a lot of the discussion, a lot of the theories. So let me know all of your thoughts about it. I really want to hear it, because like I said, I'm not 100% sold on it. Nintendo burned me with the Wii U, so I'm very cautious, very hesitant. But maybe someone knows something that has been said that I haven't seen that might change my opinion one way or another, might sway me into the buy or don't buy camp. or maybe, someone hasn't heard all the information and they want, want a little bit more info on it. Just let me know your thoughts, your opinions on it, and I will see you later on. Later, everyone.